Hey everybody, my name is Serafin. I'm the founder of Data Wallet, and pleasure to be here.
It's really sensitive, so...
Got it. I think I'll probably do it this way. Yeah, so a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Germany. I studied business at the Rotterdam School of Management. Afterwards went on to Drake University to do a brief stunt in an entrepreneurship school. And this is where the idea for Data Wallet really developed into a company. Tim kind of loved the idea, and he said, you should probably focus on this full time. He said that he wanted to, put up an initial fundraising round. He got Mark Benioff on board, and we started in roughly January 2015. And so right now we are 4 people full time, 4 people part time, and we've just launched in June 2016. So very recently, very interesting times.
And where are you based?
We're based in San Francisco.
Of course.
But we also do have an office in Berlin, so a tiny one.
Taxes
Pardon me?
sorry.
Yeah, tech, data science, yeah, exactly. So Data Wallet is a C2B data marketplace. So what we do is we connect companies that are looking to purchase data or insights about certain data for a particular user set, and the users that can provide precisely that type of data. And they, in return, get paid for an asset that is rightfully theirs. Right. So on the user side, what we have is we have an app, the Data Wallet app, which allows personal internet users to connect the data they feel comfortable sharing. They can select which types of companies they want to allow to access the data. And the third step is completely automated, right? So we match up buyers and sellers, and we, whenever a company accesses an analysis that your data powered, you will get paid, right? And on the user side, on the enterprise side, we've developed a, I'm proud to say, kind of like a market-leading audience analytics platform where companies can come in and they can create basically any target audience on Earth and explore it at the audience, at the segment, and at the individual level, right? And so we do everything in-house, so we can actually guarantee that it's completely anonymous for users to use our app. We never share any data with any third parties. So it took us 1.5 years to build this out, but it was very well worth it. So today what I want to talk about is you versus data brokers, right? So there's a lot of companies right now that are actually taking whatever data you create right behind your back and sell it off for a ton of money, right? So what precisely can you do about this? And so data has been dubbed the new oil by everyone with an MBA since circa 2010, right? I kind of have like the Groucho Marx complex where I don't want to belong to that group even though I did study business, right? And so data seems to provide the answer for almost everything, right? So it runs our entire ecosystem right now, right? Our entire infrastructure is powered on data, just like oil back in the 1950s. And so there are a lot of similarities, right? So it's kind of threefold. The first one is it requires extraction. When you have data similarly to oil, you have to have specific tools in order to, get the data from beneath the surface. So, for oils, of course, that's derricks. And for data, that is something, for instance, a program that can be hooked up to an API to extract data, right? That is one. The other one is it requires refinement. So whenever, if I gave you a barrel of oil, you wouldn't really care about the oil. You would not probably really know what to do with it. What you do care about is the result that the oil can provide you, which is getting from your hotel or from your home to this conference, right? And that's the exact same thing with data. So it needs to run through an entire value chain in order to actually provide value to you, right? So it needs to be extracted, it needs to be standardized, it needs to be productized, it needs to be distributed, it needs to be marketed, right? And thirdly, it carries value. So data is, in fact, very valuable once you can get to that particular product that is actually something that is useful to you, right? And similarly to oil, it can be traded, and you can actually make a lot of money with it, right? But at the same time, last year, $54 billion was paid out to US citizens for allowing companies to extract oil from their lands with a method called fracking, right? $54 billion in the US alone. At the same time, last year, $0 was paid out to anyone for the data that companies extracted from their premises, right? So for some reason, data is not entirely oil just yet, right? And I kind of want to talk about how precisely it is not and what the implications of that are. Right? So difference number one is data is a personal resource, right? Let's talk about what precisely you get when you buy a piece of land. You get a clearly defined geographic area, right? You get the natural habitat that is on that piece of land. So you get the, the sticks and stones, you get the trees, and you also get the natural resources that are contained in that land, provided that you did acquire the mineral rights when you got the property rights, which in the US most of the times actually is the case, right? When you buy a physical, an online property, you get pretty much nothing, right? So you get, let's leave out the technicalities of what is precisely required to actually keep a website in place, right? The entire infrastructure around putting it in place in the first place. You don't really own anything besides a domain name initially, right? You don't really get anything else. So, say Mark Zuckerberg comes here and he wants to, he wants to buy a piece of land. In the physical world, the natural resources are already contained in that land, right? So oil, for instance, is already part of the land that he is acquiring. So, it's a millennia-long process involving that organic material, pressure, time, and heat. And it's already there when he buys it. So when you occupy a piece of that land that he just bought, and a company comes to Zuck and says, hey, I want to mine the land of that person right there. Zuck could be like, okay, sure, right? They start mining, and Zuck gets paid, right? In the online world, that is not really the case. What did Mark Zuckerberg acquire when he acquired the Facebook.com? Nothing, right? Right now, the property of the Facebook, right, is probably the most valuable on earth. But that only happened after the fact, after he bought it, right? So data, the natural resources contained in the property of Facebook, were only created when people started posting stuff, when they started liking stuff, when they started poking other people, right? So unlike oil, actually every little bit of data, no matter how insignificant, is clearly attributable to a certain user that created it, right? So it's not a generic natural resource that just happened to be beneath your property on Facebook. It's something that you created yourself, right? And that actually gives you quite a little bit of power over what happens with that data. Because if now a company comes to Zuck and says, I want to, yet again, mine the land of that person right there, actually, the company will have to ask you too, right? Secondly, data is not a generic resource. I briefly touched upon that right now. So what I mean by that is oil is oil. Whether it's sourced in Texas or in Baku, it doesn't really matter. Once you refine it and put it in your car, it will get you from A to B. That is not the case with data. Data is inherently heterogeneous. So data from Facebook is entirely different than data from Amazon. Sure, there might be some overlap, right? But it's definitely something, if you wanted to have insights to power a certain decision, the Facebook data would yield an entirely different result than the Amazon data. And even within Facebook, data is very much different. For instance, the data that you make publicly available is far different from the data that you actually keep private. So it's inherently heterogeneous. So you might say, okay, this is all great, but how precisely does that help me, right? And again, you always have data brokers following you around, taking whatever data you create right behind your back, putting that into a profile, and selling that off. But actually, what those two differences allow you to do is they allow you to sell something that is twice as good for half as much, right? This is kind of like the American Gangster Blue Magic reference. It's actually more than twice as good. It's thousands of times as good. And the unique selling point number one of your own personal data is non-public data, right? Which stems from the oil as a personal resource difference. As I briefly mentioned, when you, on your Facebook property, there's a certain amount of data that you make publicly available, right? Mostly demographics, age, maybe your name, right? But there's a whole lot more that is actually, like roughly 81% from the data that we collected from all of our users is non-public. And that is actually the piece of your property that is very, very interesting, right? On that piece of property, you have your posts, your likes, etc. And that actually allows a company to really understand you as not just a customer, but also a person, and create a very vivid picture of what it is that you might be interested in. So this is actually a real-life comparison between a data set that we acquire from a data broker and whatever a person can make available through Data Wallet, right? So right here, a data broker might be able to tell you any person in that room interested in TV, true or blank. Well, that's phenomenal. That really doesn't help me at all, right? Are you interested in the new Narcos, or are you interested in Sesame Street, right? Or is it something completely different? What you can offer is you can offer multiple more dimensions, much more granular, with regards to, not just which TV show you like, but also which character and when. So companies can understand the evolution of your interests, right? And the evolution of you as a customer and as a person. And that is something that no data broker will ever be able to actually offer. Right? So whenever you bring that to the market, that nobody else is able to bring it to market. Secondly, it's cross-platform data, right? Coming back to oil is not a generic resource. So let's just assume hypothetically that data brokers were able to extract 10% of all the data you create on Facebook, on Pinterest, on Instagram, whatever it is, right? That still doesn't mean that they can take that 10% of data and put it in one profile about you. Because the thing is, there's no common identifier between the data from Facebook, Pinterest, and Amazon, right? You are the only meta entity linking all those data points together. And you are an offline entity, right? And so the matching rates that we identified from data brokers for cross-platform data is less than 5%. So whenever someone, if I want to sell you some jeans, and I go to a data broker and I tell you, show me the people that are interested in jeans. They will show me a list of people, but actually only less than 5% of those will actually be interested in jeans, right? And so whenever I put a media budget, I will waste the majority of it simply by having identified people that are really not in the market for jeans. Whenever you make data available, it's deterministically linked. Right? So there's always 100% accuracy of data point A actually belonging to data point B. So whenever you tell a company, by making your data profile available, that you're in the market for a jean, they will actually find you, and so there will be no waste of ad budget in that process. And thirdly, let's be entirely honest here, it's the only ethical way of purchasing data. If a company wants to have insights about me as a customer, the only ethical way of going about that is acquiring the data directly from me. The entire data brokerage market is based upon selling an asset that they do not own. And it's a huge market. So effectively, just to sum that up, what you bring to market is not merely data, it's a psychometric profile, right? It's a very vivid picture of you as a person, an evolution of you as a person, and allows companies to actually understand precisely that facet of you, right? So they can start building products that matter to you. They can start servicing ads and, informing people about products that actually matter to them too. And whenever, just to come back to that point, whenever you make data about yourself available, you bring the best data available to the market. You are the only one that holds a monopoly to your data. And no data broker will ever be able to offer that. So whenever you make that data available, there's no need for any company to ever go to a data broker again. So effectively what you can do by bringing your own data to market is put data brokers out of business. And if I have 2 more minutes, I can actually go into the financials a little bit. So just to kind of talk about what precisely the financial impact of such a decision is, we can go back to, I want to show you something. So this right here is the data creation per age group over the last year. So as you can see, roughly, 1/3 of all the data was created by the age group between 18 and 29. And this is the last official, the last verified assessment of the data brokerage market in the US. There was a 1.5-year investigation by the Senate Committee on Science, Commerce, and Transportation led by J. Rockefeller IV. And they pinned the annual revenues in 2012 alone in the US for data brokers at $156 billion US. So when we take a look at it, this is the total addressable market. When we talk about total serviceable market, right, what is actually the part of the market that people power with their own data? If we take a look at the revenue of Axiom in their annual report, 79% was revenues generated by marketing data services. And all the other stuff was IT and some other weird revenue models. You know, if we assume that 79% is kind of like a good estimate of what people could make with data products that are powered with their own data, we arrive at a serviceable addressable market of 123 billion. And when you break that up over the size of each of those age groups, actually, in 2012 alone, 18 to 29-year-olds in the US could have made roughly $1,000. And that is making money by literally not doing anything. And effectively, that is money that was stolen from you. That is, again, data brokerage is a market based upon a model where they sell an asset that they do not own. So you could have made that $1,000. And actually, if we keep in mind that data grows, you know, by roughly 44% per annum right now, and we correlate that with the growth of the stocks of the publicly listed data brokers, we arrive for the year 2020 at a number that is close to 15,000 US dollars for the segment 18 to 29. And as you can see, it's not just limited to that particular age group, but even 45 to 60-year-olds would have made roughly $500 if they had sold their own data. It's a subject that is actually very, very important. And it goes far beyond just the financial aspect, but I just want to highlight that. Thank you very much. And obviously, I hope that you start selling your own personal data. And of course, do that via Dateable, which you can download in the App Store. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Serafin. Very interesting. Many interesting, potential leads from that discussion. One kind of clarifying question that I had, before we go, some of the other things. So, when you have the numbers there, so is Facebook or is Google part of what is now counted as the data brokerage market, or then you have these, entities who are solely kind of, buying and selling data? So, so the answer is.
The answer is no.
No.
So they're not counted into the data brokerage revenue number. So they're mostly counted into the ads market, because Facebook doesn't sell your data directly, so they use your data in order to surface the right ads to you. But they don't actually take the data that you create and sell it off behind your back. There are entities that focus on taking the data, right, such as DataSift, and generate insights about that too. But again, that mostly pertains to publicly available data that you made available yourself, which comes back to the fact that you actually have quite a bit of power in terms of deciding how much of the data you want to make available, and therefore make available not just for the public to see and read your posts, but for data brokers to make money off of.
Okay. So, you take this sort of, the next step should be that we actually make these transactions now explicit. So instead of this implicit value of, I trade my profile to get services, you are taking the stance of, well, no, actually what we should do is to provide people, the tools to actually start selling and buying and getting money, back. So that's what I understood. Can you just, briefly, because you didn't touch it too much, briefly explain, so how does Data Wallet then actually work?
Yeah.
And, then there are some others, like, Dateable has been there earlier and wasn't a big success, so what makes your thing a success?
Right, so let me answer that part of the question first. What makes us a success is that we can actually promise 100% anonymity by owning the entire value chain ourselves. So, Dateable actually had a business model where they took the data, they gave you a drilling tool, to come back to the oil analogy. They gave you a drilling tool and allowed you to hook up that drilling tool to your data, you pipelined it to them, and then they did whatever the hell they wanted with it. Right? Effectively what happened is, whenever you linked your credit card data to Dateable, they sold it off to hedge funds in New York City. So it's a completely intransparent process. And so what we do is we have a clearly defined pricing system. Whenever you make money with your data, you get 100% of it. We charge a commission to facilitating that transaction from the enterprise side that uses the analyses, and we charge something for the analyses that we generate, so platform fee. Secondly, what was the first one?
Well, I think all in all. So what does Data Wallet do?
Right.
I mean, what's the product?
Okay. So the product on the enterprise side is if you have, let's come back to the jeans. If you have a pair of jeans that you want to sell to 18 to 29-year-olds in Helsinki, then you can go to Facebook, you can create an ad, you can go to Facebook, and Facebook will deliver it to precisely those 18 to 29-year-olds in Helsinki, right? Awesome. But Facebook assumes that you know as much about your target group as they do. So you actually have no idea what those 18 and 29-year-olds in Helsinki look like, right? And that is what you can learn through Data Wallet. So you can come into Data Wallet and you can say, dear Data Wallet guys, please show me 18 and 29-year-olds in Helsinki and show me data from Facebook, Pinterest, whatever, right? And then we actually generate an audience for you that analyzes, okay, what are the interests, right, that people, for instance, talk about on Facebook? What are the pages that they have liked? We segment it, we take a look at which are there maybe 20 segments, 20 individual micro segments that you should focus on and market to? Or is it just one glob of people, that are actually very, very similar? And so what we do is we create a feedback loop between you and your target audience. And Facebook is the awesome mechanism that actually services the ads to that audience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
John?
How many users do you have?
For Data Wallet, roughly 30,000. But we just started in...
No, just I'm trying to get
Yeah,
some.
yeah.
And you're venture financed or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm an angel, right? So Tim Draper was our early investor together with Mark Benioff. And then we have some other angel money that we collected ever since. Yeah.
So I think we can return some of the themes later in the overall discussion. I just want to, cannot resist the temptation and a little bit back to this. Okay, so you have these godfathers now, like, Mark Benioff and, Tim Draper, and, but the question was that, okay, so when you become, the next Mark Zuckerberg, so what would make you to bring the company so that it's headquartered in Europe?
Well, first and foremost, it's not for lack of try. First and foremost, super flattering, but it's going to take like another 150 lifetimes before we get to that scale. It's not that for lack of trying in Europe. It's just that there wasn't like a very open ear for an idea like that in Berlin, where I was before. So on the other hand, in Silicon Valley, there wasn't room for that right from the get-go. I love Europe. And frankly, to be entirely honest, there's a certain base up on also like the regulations that are in place. Maybe that is actually the place to be in order for our users to know that we are compliant with regulations that are actually very much protecting the user.
Yeah.
Right. Also on that note, since we are very early on, but we actually have a lot, we'll probably be open sourcing almost all of our technology so that everybody can see that all the data that we source actually, how it is being handled, what precisely happens with the data, etc. So we want to definitely be at the bleeding edge in terms of transparency around what precisely happens with the data that we link. And maybe being in Europe substantiates that take on the story.
Okay, very good.